All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. So you might notice things look a little different today. I'm not behind my desk or hosting from a lab or something. Today we are in the field. We are hanging out at the Virginia Zoo in Norfolk, Virginia. So all day long, we've been meeting different animals, talking to the keepers, and learning awesome things about conservation. So this hangout today was entitled Mystery Animal. Was it going to slither? What's it going to climb? So I think you can clearly see right now that we do not have a sloth hanging out with us right now. We have Cleo joining us, and with Cleo, we have Tara and Stephanie, who are kind of helping handle Cleo, and they're going to tell us a little bit about Cleo. And after that happens, we're going to have a little live Q&A action. So we're having a blast at the zoo. This is our fourth event of the day. We're going to hang out with the giraffes after this, but for now, let's learn all about Cleo. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Stephanie.
Sure. Hi. So this is Cleopatra, or Cleo for short. And she is a Burmese python. So Burmese pythons are one of the 5 largest snakes in the world, and they're native to Southeast Asia. Cleo is a rescue, is why she's here at the zoo. So these guys are really common in the pet trade, unfortunately, and they get really large. But she was actually confiscated and rescued for not being well taken care of. Which is why she lives here with us here at the zoo. She, you notice the coloration is yellow and white, and that is because she was an albino. So typically Burmese pythons have a pretty black and brown pattern on them, but she's albino, so she lacks that pigment. So in an albino snake, it's yellow and white. So these guys, again, are native to Southeast Asia, and they live in all types of habitats, from mountains to dry areas and savannas and grasslands, and they can hunt. So they're ambush hunters. They can go a really long time without eating. She's just going to do her own thing while we're talking. So they go a really long time without eating, and they sit and they wait for prey. So they're not active hunters. They'll sit and wait for something to come by. So an albino snake like Cleopatra would not live to be this long or this big out in the wild. Because she would stick out like a sore thumb. It would hard to camouflage and be an ambush hunter in the bottom of the forest when you stick out like a ripe banana. So this coloration is really common in the pet trade. But Burmese pythons, again, so in Asia, these guys like to hang out in trees when they're younger and smaller, and they actually have a prehensile tail, which is pretty cool. But as they get larger and heavier, they are more ground dwelling. So they can't hang in the trees as well because they're just so heavy. And again, they'll eat anything. They'll ambush hunters. And they give better parental care than a lot of reptiles. So the moms can lay up to 100 eggs. Typically not that many, but they can lay up to 100 eggs. And they'll actually incubate their eggs by doing rapid muscle movement, which will warm the eggs up, kind of like imagine us shivering or doing a shiver. So they'll actually incubate the eggs, make sure they're warm, and then once they're hatched, they'll go on their own way. You can move to be with her if you want. It doesn't matter. So snakes, I don't know if you guys have heard, right? A lot of people are scared of snakes, and I think the main thing, a lot of people, I know a lot of grown-ups don't like to look at snakes because when they walk by them, it looks like they're always staring at you because they say, but snakes never blink. So snakes don't have eyelids. They don't close their eyes. So their eyes are always open. They do actually have a clear film or a clear thing across their eye. It's called a brill. And that actually on the outside of that brill has a scale as well. So if you guys have ever heard of snakes shedding their skin, so we as humans shed our skin as well, but we shed skin cells, little here and a little there, and we don't really recognize it. As we grow from infants to toddlers to grown adults, our skin is stretchy and it just grows with us. Well, snakes don't have stretchy skin, and it doesn't grow with them like that. So when they outgrow the skin that they're in, they pretty much just shed it and grow new skin. So that's when a snake sheds. And when their eyes turn blue, if you guys have ever heard that or seen where a snake's eye looks milky because they're shedding, it's because that fluid is building up in between their old brill or eye cap and their new one. And then that scale sheds, so they get new eye caps or eye brill as well. I'm trying to move her and talk. You guys see her, if you can see her tongue. So she has that forked tongue, right? And snakes have forked tongue, and they use their tongue for smelling. So they have nostrils just like us, but they don't use their nostrils to smell. They use the forked tongue, and the forked tongue lets them see if the scent is coming from the right or from the left. and they use that to pick up air particles, and then they touch it on in their mouth to their Jacobson's organ, and that kind of has a it's just a bunch of cells, and it lets them smell and determine what they're smelling. Can you see her? No, you can't. You're all right. And you guys notice the lack of something on the side of her head that we have here, you guys are listening to me with right now. So snakes don't have ears. They use their sense of smell, which is their best sense, and then they can use their sense of touch as well, or their vibrations to feel things. What else? Unhinging jaws. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, a snake can unhinge its jaws or dislocate its jaw to eat. Because we know, so inside that mouth, they have backwards facing teeth. So they will strike and catch their prey, and their teeth face backwards. And they have several rows, 4 rows in the bottom, 2 rows on the top, or vice versa. 6 rows of teeth altogether in a Burmese python. And so they catch that prey and they'll squeeze. So Burmese pythons are constrictors. So they squeeze their prey, and every time their prey takes a breath, they squeeze a little harder until their prey is suffocated, and then they swallow whole. So their mouth is really full of food. They have a little airway, a little tube in the back of their mouth that comes out that allows them to continue to breathe. But the difference, everybody take their fingers and feel here, and open your mouth. And you feel that jaw moving right underneath your ears, if you can see. And you feel that jaw. So snakes don't have a chin, so their jaw is not connected to their chin. And snakes' jaws are not fused together like ours are, where their top jaw is then fused into their skull. These guys, their top jaw is connected with their brain casing with lots of stretchy ligaments and muscles. So their jaw doesn't necessarily dislocate. It's just really stretchy and has that real ability that's not locked into place like ours to open. And then they can swallow that, and their lower jaw actually kind of walks the prey down. So one side of the jaw will come up while this one pulls, and it kind of walks like this, and they use that jaw to pull that food down into their throat and their mouth. And then they digest it. Oh, I'm gonna move with her a little more. She's taking an adventure.
I like it. It's a hangout on the move.
Yes, yes. So Cleo does have a few, I don't know, you might not be able to see them where you guys are. So she does have some growth scales here. She does have some markings on her that are scars from where she was rescued. But she has a really good temperament. So again, these guys, they're in their native environment in Asia. So habitat loss, the growth of humans, and they're actually hunted for their skin to use in the leather trade. These guys also are invasive species in a lot of areas. So again, a lot of people get these as pets, and in the Everglades after a giant hurricane, and people think that they were pets or actually even got away from zoos, but they breed, and it's a really good environment for them because it's very similar to their native environment. It's nice and warm and humid, and these guys love water. So a lot of them live in water for a long time. And so in the Everglades, they just continue to reproduce, and they breed and lay all those eggs, and the mom's really good at incubating, and they hatch, and they have lots and lots of babies, and there's no natural predator. So when they're an invasive species, they are even killing things like alligators, who are the apex predator in the Everglades. So they can take on and eat an alligator, but these guys have no predators and nothing that can hunt them. So they're actually ruining the ecosystem in the Everglades. They're eating a lot of endangered birds and a lot of other endangered species that typically didn't have predators before. So we actually are, a lot of places are having like capture them out of the, or even to hunt them in the Everglades, because they are ruining that ecosystem and eating a lot of the endangered birds and stuff that we are trying to save. You guys see that tongue flicking? She's flicking to get all those air particles. What do you think? So we see her moving. So pythons, she's a Burmese python, and these guys are related to boas. They're very similar. They're actually considered primitive snakes. So they actually have 2 functioning sets of lungs, which is different from all other snakes. And they have vestigial or leftover organs, which are legs, which they come out as spurs. So if you look at the bottom of a boa constrictor or a python, they have little spurs that are on either side of their cloaca, which is the opening where they use the bathroom or moms lay eggs. And those are leftover or vestigial legs from a long time ago, from evolution. And these guys, one of the main differences, there's differences in their, these guys have one extra bone in their head than a boa does. There's little differences that way. But the big difference is boas actually give birth to live babies and pythons lay eggs. So a boa has their eggs inside their body, and then the babies will, or the eggs will hatch inside the mom, and then the mom gives birth to the live already hatched babies, where pythons lay eggs. So it's one of the big major differences. And then the geographic difference as well. So these guys are considered old world because they are from Asia and stuff, and boas are considered new world because they're from Central, South, and North America. She's loving life. Cleo here, she is about 160 pounds. These guys can get upwards of 200 pounds. And their average lifespan is about 20 years. But the oldest one recorded, it has been 28 years. And because Cleopatra is a rescue, we do not know her exact age. We think she's in her 20s, which would make her an old girl, but maybe she's just a teenager. We're not sure exactly how old she is. And she weighs 160 pounds. So generally the females can be a little bigger than the males. And again, could be upwards of 200 pounds, but she is bred at 160. And she measured at about 13 and a half feet last time we measured her length.
All right. So, I mean, you can't help but be struck by her coloration.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's incredible. She's such a beautiful looking girl. Now in captivity, she's obviously pretty safe, but if she were born with this coloration, she'd be at a disadvantage, wouldn't she?
Yes, yeah. So like I was saying earlier about being ambush hunters, and it's hard to be an ambush hunter when you stick out like a sore thumb or a ripe banana. Like she would not be able to hide in the cover, in the leaf and stuff in the forest. And even when they're younger, these guys will hunt again. They have the prehensile tails and they spend a lot of time in trees, but they don't blend in with that green and brown very well when they're yellow and white. So it's very rare to see one this coloration this large in the wild, or if at all.
Very cool. All right. So what do you think? Time to meet some classrooms?
Sure.
All right. So I want to give a quick shout out to some YouTube classrooms. We have such a great group of classrooms tuning in on YouTube right now. We've got some classrooms joining us in Lee County, Virginia. We've got Mrs. Hodgkin's class hanging out in Aurora, Ontario. So my son's in that class. Hey, Finn, grade 2s. Let's see, Rainy River, Ontario, Red Deer, Alberta. Lots of cool classrooms joining in. You know what? Let's start off with a classroom question right from YouTube. So they're wondering about the babies that this snake has. Is it live birth or eggs?
Eggs. So pythons have eggs, and boa constrictors have live babies.
All right. Very cool. So online classrooms, keep those questions coming. To our classrooms who are tuning in live with us on camera, when I introduce your class, I just need you to unmute the microphone for me, okay? Say a big hi, and then go ahead with one of your questions. So let's get started. Let's go to our first classroom. They are joining us, actually not too far away, Virginia Beach. Oh. Mrs. Presley has some second graders hanging out there. So Mrs. Presley, if you want to turn that mic on, let's get a big hello, and then let's go for a question.
Okay, say who you are.
I'm Cassidy, and my question is that what do they eat?
Okay, that's a great question. So birds a lot of things. So they eat depending on their size. So a small baby snake would eat something very small and very little, and they don't tend to eat anything wider. I don't know if you guys can see, bigger than the biggest part of their body. So she would eat nothing that's wider or bigger than this part of her body. But a snake this size, she gets fed a rabbit. So a really big rabbit, and she eats every 6 to 10 weeks, just depending on how active she is. Because remember, so snakes are reptiles, so they are ectothermic. They get their heat from the outside environment. They don't need all that energy to regulate their temperature like mammals, so they don't need to eat as often. In the wild, these guys would eat anything that they can find. They're pretty opportunistic hunters, small mammals, birds, anything like that. They get really large. You can even eat things like deer and big pigs.
All right.
Good question. Thank you.
Great question. Let's head to Canada this time. Bradford, Ontario. Mrs. Bellin's class. Looks like some third graders hanging out with us. If you guys want to turn your mic on, give us a big shout out, and then let's take a question.
Okay. Okay.
There they are.
Yay.
Hi, my name's Faith, and When snakes are born, are they long or small?
Are they long or small when snakes are born or hatched? So typically, like most, I won't say all, but like most animal species, they are small when they are hatched, and then they get larger as they grow up. So when a snake this size hatches, they can be really small, just a half a foot, less than a half of a ruler. And then they grow. So they shed, they outgrow that skin and they shed a lot and continuously grow pretty large until they get this big. So that's a great question.
All right. Thank you, Bradford, Ontario. Let's see. Bristol, Connecticut, grade 3 is with Mrs. DeShaney. If you want to turn your mic on.
Okay. My question is, do you only rescue animals from Virginia or other places?
Oh, that's a great question. So here at the zoo, we don't only rescue animals, right? So we do breed animals, we get animals from other zoos and aquariums, but we do have quite a few rescues. And several of them, I can't answer for the whole zoo, but most of the rescues that we have, to my knowledge, a lot of them are from Virginia. So Cleopatra was rescued, but then she was actually sent all the way down to Florida to SeaWorld Orlando to be rehabilitated. So she had lots of scars or lots of wounds and stuff that needed to heal. And a snake, a reptile, takes a really long time to heal. So it took a couple years when she was down in SeaWorld Orlando, and she traveled all the way back to Virginia to be with us. We have a couple parrots and stuff that were also rescued, and they were rescued here in Virginia.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome question. So we're going to go to some kindergartners. Mr. Beatty's class is hanging out with us in Palm Beach Gardens. When you turn your mic on, let us know. Is that in Florida, maybe?
Can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Oh, we are. Yes, we are in Florida.
All right. Nailed it.
Here, Sage, come up and do your question. You got a question, right?
Why is it so?
Okay, come here.
Why is it so big?
Oh, hold on. Let me move my. Ready, Sage?
Why is it so big?
So big. Because
Why?
are one of the largest species of snakes in the world. So this is how big they get. And she is pretty old. She's an adult. So she has been growing for many, many years to get this size.
So we'll steal a question from YouTube.
Okay.
We've got a couple of questions coming in about Cleo, and they're wondering about her movement.
All right. So you guys see this is snakes pretty much have one long backbone and lots of ribs. And then she's moving, so no legs, right? They use their muscles. So watch how close, if they can get it on camera, her muscles as they move. It almost looks like, think about a worm, how she's moving there. So they can have side to side. So all of that is with muscle movement as she is moving. This is about as fast as she moves. They do not have, they're not super fast. They don't need to be. But they can strike very fast. So if they coil up and want to strike to grab prey, they can strike fast. But other than that, this is about as fast as she moves.
All right, we're going to visit some second graders in Middleton, Massachusetts. Mrs. Kennedy, if you want to turn your microphone on, we're ready for you.
Oh, say hello, boys and girls. All right, want to ask a question? Go on up, Hunter. Say hi. My name is Hunter.
Hello, my
No, step back a little. The camera's up there. Yep.
Hello, my name is Hunter. Why do snakes have nostrils and what do they use them for?
Couldn't hear.
Nostrils.
Oh, speak a little. Can you say it again? He asked, why do snakes have nostrils and what do they use them for?
So they use them, the snakes have nostrils, they use them to breathe like us. They just don't use them to smell. So they will breathe out of their nostrils. Snakes, especially Burmese pythons or pythons in general, love water. So they actually will submerge their entire body in water, but they need to breathe air because they have lungs like us. So they can stick their nose, if you think of like an alligator or something else, they can stick those nostrils out from the water and have the rest of their body submerged to be able to breathe the air. So they use those nostrils to breathe, they just don't use them to smell like we do.
All right, we're going to take a little trip to Louisville, Kentucky. We've got some kindergartners. There's gardeners in this group.
Question?
So I want you to turn your mic on and get really loud. I want to hear how loud 50 kindergartners can be.
All right, can you hear us?
We can. Hey, kindergarten.
Hi. All right. Hi, this is Colin.
Hi, Colin.
You ask your question, Colin.
Does
Cleo.
Cleo have bones?
She has bones. That's a good question. She does have bones. So she does. She is does have one giant long backbone and rib bones. So yeah, snakes do have bones. That's a very good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So we have from Mrs. Nordberg's class on YouTube. They're wondering about her favorite food. What's her favorite thing to have?
Oh, well, she only ever gets offered what her favorite food is. She really only gets offered one thing, and that's rabbits. And I don't think she would turn down anything if she was hungry. So she is a large snake, so she eats one large meal very infrequently, so not very often, every couple of months, and she gets fed rabbits.
All right, very cool. So we've made one trip through the classroom so far. I do want to remind classrooms at this point, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're in a camera spot, take some pictures, share them on Twitter, hashtag exploring by the seat, as well as tag at Virginia Zoo, because we'd love to see pictures of classrooms in action. But I think we can do a speed round through the classroom. So I'm going to go in a different order this time. We'll start off with Ms. DeShaney's group in Bristol, Connecticut. If you want to turn your mic on, we're ready.
You got it. Go ahead, Luke.
My question is, how long is the python when it is fully grown?
How long is a python when it's fully grown? So that's kind of a trick question because pythons never stop growing. So snakes never stop growing until the day they die. So they grow much faster when they're smaller, but they grow much slower as the bigger they get. So a baby snake grows fairly quickly, and then once it's this size, so their average is about 16 feet in length. So about 16 feet is when they're about done. They technically never stop growing. That's why they shed.
All right, very cool. Mr. Beatty, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We're ready.
Ready? All right, Joseph, come here, bud. I want to make sure my camera. Oh, what happened? Hello?
We gotcha.
Awesome. All right, Joseph, you have a question.
How hard is it when they bite?
How hard is it when they bite?
Yeah, how hard do they bite?
It's pretty hard. So they have a pretty big jaw strength, and they have lots and lots of teeth in their mouth. So we have 2 rows of teeth. These guys have 6 rows of teeth in their mouth. And our teeth grow straight down and straight up, and theirs grows backwards. So when they bite, you couldn't pull your hand out because the teeth are going backwards into your skin, kind of think of like a fish hook. And then they wrap and squeeze. So it can hurt pretty bad, and they can leave quite a few marks on your hand or foot if they were to bite you.
All right. Mrs. Presley's group, Virginia Beach, grade 2s. Yep. For us.
Say your name.
My name's Elena. I have a question for you guys. And how much days until the eggs hatch?
Oh, that's a good question. So how many days until the eggs hatch? So their incubation time, or the time that is in there, is typically around 60 to 80 days, so about 2.5 months. That's a good question.
And I have one more question. How long do they look like when they hatch?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that question. Typically just a couple inches long. They're not big at all when they hatch. Sometimes the boas, the live babies, are a little larger, but usually some of the eggs are pretty small, but they can shed the first day or 2 after they're hatched and grow.
All right, before we jump to another classroom, we've all had a chance to look at Cleo and see how awesome she is. I want to see a show of hands. How many would think that they'd want a pet like Cleo at home? Anybody want a snake that big? I think it's 50-50.
Oh.
How many think their mom and dad might not let them, though? That might be the tough part. All right, let's grab another question. Let's go to Mrs. Bellin's group in Bradford, Ontario. If you guys want to turn your mic on, we're ready.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You can start talking. My name's Lincoln, and my question is, when they sleep, do they close their eyes?
Oh, that's a good question. They do not, because if you heard earlier what I said earlier, they do not have eyelids. They cannot close their eyes. They have nothing to close over those eyes. So their eyes are always there, and they have one small frill. So it's kind of like a cap over their eyes, like fake glasses or something. But it actually has a scale on the outside. But they can't close their eyes. They don't have eyelids like we do.
All right, good question. Massachusetts, Mrs. Kennedy, do you want to turn your mic on for one more question?
All right, Michael, go on up.
Hi, I'm Michael. Question: do they have venom or not?
They have venom? All right, that's a great question. They do not have venom. So pythons are constrictors. So usually there's a broad range of a couple kinds of snakes. There's venomous snakes, there's constrictors. And pythons and boas both are constrictors. Have fangs and they don't have any venom glands. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. So we have another question from YouTube, and it's top speed is.
What do I think? This is it.
This is it.
So we can all guess. What do we think? You guys tell me. What's her top speed? So this is very slow, right? Just a couple, probably inches a minute. No, she can go a little faster than that. But this is it. This is her top speed. She doesn't go fast.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm thinking about after a big meal in the stomach, what does she go and do after that? She's got a big meal in her stomach.
She has a big meal in her stomach. She typically just lays and hangs out. So we, as her keepers, do not touch her, pick her up, and jostle her. So again, snakes and reptiles are pretty slow at everything they do. So they have really slow digestion, especially with a meal like that. So we don't handle her for at least 48 hours, so 2 days. So she pretty much just chills and lays there and lets the food digest.
All right, Louisville, Kentucky, our big class of kindergartners, Mrs. K, if you want to turn your mic on.
All right. Say hi. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Caudle.
Hi.
Are they nocturnal?
Are they nocturnal? That is a very good question. So they don't close their eyes, so it's hard to they sleep, but these guys are more active at night. That is a great question.
That's a really good question.
Thank you. Oh, she loves the daylight. She loves the sunshine because remember they get their heat from the environment. So she loves to bask in the sun and loves to hang out in the grass. But over in Southeast Asia, they are more active at night.
All right, we're going to take one more question from the YouTube community, and they're wondering, you mentioned that she's a rescue. They're wondering what kind of situation, how did she come to be here?
So she was rescued. So someone had her as a pet, but they actually had her in an establishment. So at a bar, and they had her in a really small tank. And remember, snakes don't eat that often. They don't need to eat that often. And so the owner was feeding her too much, too often. So giving her big rats and things like that. And she wasn't hungry, so she didn't eat them. Instead, the rats and her things that were fed to her as food chewed on her. So she had, you can see a scar here. So she had a lot of, here's another one here. So she had a lot of open bite wounds from the food that she was supposed to be being fed eating her. And so she had to go be rescued, and clear up all those wounds.
All right. Well, she's absolutely beautiful. And, there's all those myths and rumors that snakes are slimy and gross, but I can tell you from experience, she is so beautiful and smooth. Absolutely incredible.
Feel your fingernail. That's what her scales feel like. Your fingernail. It's made out of the same stuff called keratin.
Yeah. Well, listen, Stephanie, thank you so much. Tara, thank you so much. You've been absolutely incredible. And this is one of our most mobile hangouts that we've ever had, our most mobile events. I think we've used and explored the entire space all around it. So thank you so much for that today, boys and girls. Thank you so much for all your amazing questions. We've got one more event from the zoo. We're going to hang out with the giraffes at 2 o'clock Eastern, so we hope to see everybody joining in then. And the last thing we'll do today, if you want to turn all your microphones on in your classrooms, get nice and loud. Let Cleo hear you. A big goodbye and thank you, and then we'll sign off for today. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Bye.